All right, Conjure women, let's talk about what it means to have a goddess complex. Now, of course, this is a play on words, and I am sure that many of us have heard of the terminology God complex, right? But because we are Conjure women, because we are witches, it is important in my belief system to fully embody and accept the feminine identification that we are, especially those of us. And yes, this may sound biased, it may sound, however, but especially those of us who were born as divine feminine women, female. It is exceptionally important for us to understand and embody, embrace the goddess aspects of who we are. Now, yes, we all have the, balance of yin and yang, the balance of feminine and masculine. But when you show up in this 3D planet as a woman, birthed out of your mother's womb as a woman, you carry a complex within you that I honestly believe more women need to get comfortable with identifying as. They need to get comfortable with embracing and living their life through that lens as opposed to the patriarchal lens that most of us have been exposed to. So let's actually start there. Let's start with the definition of God complex. So typically when someone says that they have a God complex, and you guys know I love a good definition, I love a good etymology, right? But usually what they're referring to is just having this unwavering belief system when it comes down to them, when it comes down to their personal abilities, whatever privileges that they think they have. They oftentimes have an expectation of special treatment. But when you get down to more of the psychological terminologies and definitions, one thing that you'll probably find is where people start talking more about having more sadistic or negative connotations or frameworks. But when you dig a little bit deeper and you start going into more of the psychological terminologies, typically that's where you're going to start seeing things about, people saying like, oh, someone has a God plant complex and they think they're always right. Or, they feel like the rules don't apply to them. They have a disregard for somebody else's feelings or what other people may need in their lives. And so they essentially consider themselves to be so far superior and ahead of everybody else that there's no regard for them. And I can even recall when I was doing more research for this particular conversation that there were articles and things like that where they were talking about these people having lack of empathy, or they were having an issue with being able to take criticism from others. And so while they were certainly not saying that people with God complexes are narcissists, they absolutely alluded to it, right? They did everything but say these people who carry a God complex are people who are narcissistic. Why do I share all of this with you if I am encouraging you to have a goddess complex? Well, as you guys know, I love to, talk from a more magical perspective. I love to talk from an esoteric or occult perspective, not necessarily from a psychological perspective all the time, although these worlds do often kind of intertwine or dance with each other. When I'm referring to women having a goddess complex, there's two things that I really want for you to keep in mind. One of them is mundane, the other is magical. The mundane reason that I want to encourage you to carry this belief system, to strengthen this belief system over yourself, is because from a biological perspective, you guys, it's already been confirmed that biologically speaking, genetically speaking, female is the superior. Female is the dominant. So we're not even going against biology. For those of you that need that, if you need biology to kind of be your anchoring or to confirm something for you, it has already been established time and time again, not only from medical perspectives, but from scientific perspectives as well as psychological. It's already been established and proven that the divine feminine is the superior of the two. It does not mean that the male or men are insignificant. It doesn't mean that at all. They hold a lot of value to them. Unfortunately, there are just a lot that don't know that, or they don't understand where their value is positioned. But that's number one. So if you need something from a more tangible, non-spiritual perspective to convince you that it is perfectly within your right and you should be operating from a state of goddess complex, there you have it, right? Feel free to go down the rabbit hole, look it up. I have done a plethora of research on my own, more so just for my own knowledge, because for me personally, all I needed was spiritual confirmation. That's honestly what I needed. I needed just the spiritual confirmation. So let's talk about it. And we'll probably spend more time from that side of things anyway. When we look at the divine feminine, the embodiment of a goddess, whether she be a goddess, a high priestess, a sibyl, a pharaoh, a witch, a wise crone woman, whatever name, she would be titled as, when we look at her in terms of how she shows up in the world, there is a level of power, of influence, of creation. Everything that masculine would want, the divine feminine already has. And the divine feminine has had it since inception, has had it since creation of itself. So, if you are operating on this planet as a divine feminine woman, right? And when I say feminine, I also want to just throw this in here, you guys. I don't mean dainty. I don't mean girly. I don't mean just wearing pink, because femininity is far more expansive than that. But when you are embodied in that way, and it is my belief system that you made the decision to show up as a divine feminine. This was a part of your contract when you came here to this planet. You said, I want to come as a woman. Sometimes we don't understand what that entails. We don't recognize that there is a level of responsibility and power that we have. Some of us misuse it. Some of us don't know that we even have it. But when you made the decision that you were going to show up in this 3D reality as a woman, you are supposed to be navigating this life and operating this life from a state of superiority. You're supposed to be looking at your world, looking at your life as the goddess that you are. It is already embedded and birthed in you. It's already ingrained in your DNA. It's not anything that you have to learn to do. Actually, let me take that back. You might need to relearn to do it, but not because you didn't have it, not because you didn't have the ability to operate this way. It was because it was either submitted out of you, so they beat you into submission. And when I say beating out of you, I don't obviously mean physical. I'm talking about more actually than anything energetically, mentally, and emotionally. It has been beaten into you that you are to be submissive, that you are supposed to walk around life humble, that you are supposed to walk around life accepting what is given to you as opposed to taking what is already divinely yours, having the expectation that you are already to experience life as you desire for it to be experienced. That is goddess complex. So from a esoteric perspective, from a magical perspective, the definition of a goddess complex is very different from that of a God complex in a patriarchal society. When someone has a God complex, as we just identified, it is linked to narcissism. Now, if you know about the original story of narcissism and where it came from, I'm going to be honest with you. Even when I went down that, little tangent and I realized that falling in love with yourself is something that a god or a goddess is already going to do. Right? If anybody ever watches a Shira goddess, some of you may know her as Shira 7, but I know her as a Shira goddess. She actually touched on this. She had a whole conversation about it in one of her lives where she explained that when you are operating from a god level of thinking or a goddess level of thinking, you're right. You're not concerned about how someone else views you. You're not concerned about whether or not you are going to get the things that you desire out of this life. And it's because you have put yourself in a deity state of being and a deity state of consciousness. When you start operating your life from a state of deity, you start looking at yourself as the creator that you are and not just someone accepting scraps. When humans look at themselves as mere human, they are typically those willing to accept whatever is being given to them. They'll take whatever kind of relationship shows up. As long as he looked at me and told me I was cute, they will take whatever, type of job, as long as it pays enough. And some people won't even do that. Some people will go so far into the trash can that they will take the lowest paying job possible. And it's just because that was the easiest thing to get. That is not goddess energy at all. Goddess energy operates and moves as a creator first and foremost, as existing in constant creation. That is what it means to have a goddess complex from a spiritual perspective. It means that you understand that you are the ruler over your world. It means that, of course, yes, because we chose to be here in human bodies, we have to abide by the universal laws, things of that nature. We get that part, right? But just because we decided to show up here as humans does not mean that we no longer have access to the goddess that has been ingrained inside of this human body. So we know what some of the characteristics are of the patriarchal God complex, but from the matriarchal goddess complex, that is creator, that is receiver, that is transmuter, that's magician. That's what that energy is. That is healer, that is intuitive, that's nurturer, that is everything that you desire coming to physical form. So when we tie your goddess complex state of consciousness to your magic, when you start performing magic from this energy of I am the divine creator, or for those of you who maybe are a little uncomfortable with that, I am an extension of the ultimate divine creator. I have now the ability with my goddess complex to think something, to invoke something, to put things together in order to form something new. That's called transmutation. I have the ability to do all of these things. It is so much more natural for you as a woman to do this. And again, I'm not saying that men can't do it, and I'm not saying that they don't hold any value, because they absolutely do. But I'm talking specifically to my women who want to change their lives. They want to see things show up for them. They want to live in this 3D planet with a better life experience. Start embodying goddess complex energy. I'm telling you, it'll turn things around for you much quicker than you think. When you start waking up feeling like I deserve the absolute best that life has to offer, and I get to decide what that even looks like, to some women, the best that life has to offer is going to be driving around in a Rolls Royce. It's going to be going on shopping sprees, going on vacations. That's the best that life has to offer. For other women, the best that life has to offer is being a philanthropist, going across, whether it be their state, their country, across the world, to help others, to be of value, of service to others. That could be the best that life has to offer for them. But then you have other women, the best that life has to offer them is living paycheck to paycheck, is not seeing themselves worthy of better, even though there's something in them that wants better. So you, even as the goddess, get to decide what the best looks like for you. And the reason why I wanted us to have this conversation, I feel like this episode might actually be a little short, because I drove the point home, I feel, where when you start embracing goddess complex, when you start looking at yourself as an extension of or the divine creator over your reality, yes, you are going to feel like you are right. Because guess what? In your world, you are. In your world, the decisions that you make, these are decisions that you chose. These are decisions and outcomes, experiences that you determined were best for you at the time. So you're right. You are right in your world. You will find that there is a level of superiority that you have. And I'm going to be honest with you, ladies, and I'll hold your hand when I say this. That's not always a bad thing to feel superior. That is not always a bad thing. We have to remember that we deal with energies of vastness. Not every energy is great. Not every energy is that of, divine light. And I just want harmony, and I want everyone to be happy, and I want world peace. Most people don't want world peace. Most people don't care enough to want world peace. Most people want to make sure that them and their families are good. That's what they want. Most people want to have some sort of power and control, whether it be over themselves and their own reality. Sometimes it could be over people. It could be over companies. Most of the time, the things that people want, because we are inherently selfish, it has a lot to do with us and the people attached to us. So because we know that not all energy operates and show up in the same way, sometimes you will experience some low vibrating energy. Don't you want to be superior to that? I know I do, and I feel like I am very superior to a lot of things. I'm being totally honest with you. And one thing that I found to be so interesting was I don't particularly care for, AI that much if I'm being honest, but whenever you do any sort of a search, it'll give you an AI overview first, right? And then you have to go and really do a deep dive into independent, studies and research and things of that nature. This is just my belief system in order to really find what you're looking for. But one thing that I thought was quite interesting was the example that was given of God complex came from AI. It was Kanye West. And it was so funny to me because when they described, this example, this person being the example of a God complex, the first thing that I thought about was, okay, I could see how they could come up with that. And based off of the patriarchal definition of a God complex, he would fit the framework. But what I found to be interesting was in the same paragraph, it described the God complex as being someone who exhibits unshakable faith in their absolute power and superiority. And this is the reason why, you guys, I feel like it is so important in this, day and time in the age of Aquarius, where there's all this information and open knowledge. It is really important for us to dissect and ask ourselves if things make sense or if they don't make sense. Really ask yourself, what is the challenge? What is the problem of having absolute unshakable belief in your own power? If you believe that your power is unshakable, if you believe that there is no other rule or reign higher than your own state of consciousness, tell me, please, someone tell me, why is this a negative? Why would it be a negative that I would want to carry that type of thought process about my own existence, about my own life? In my opinion, and just my opinion, the only reason why someone would feel that to be a negative is if they are trying to gain control or power over your existence. So they don't want you to think that highly of yourself. They don't want you to believe that you have power that is so unshakable, that cannot be penetrated by anyone else, by any other external force. They don't want you thinking that, because the minute you start thinking it and believing it and acting like that and actually utilizing your power, babes, that means that they can't control you anymore. That's what that means. And that is the reason why I said that there is a separation between the patriarchal definition of a God complex versus a goddess complex. These are not the same thing. These do not even sit in the same framework. When we're talking from an energetic, spiritual perspective, it has already been determined that the goddess is superior. So we're not operating outside of what is natural when women start operating and maneuvering in this life with a goddess complex. Now, if you want to continue to believe that there's something wrong with you operating in this way, or that you would find yourself in, a similar situation to that of, let's say, a Kanye, which, let's be real, say what you want to say about Kanye. He has managed to do a lot. He has managed to fulfill a lot. Whether or not he, chose to sacrifice certain things or do certain, practices, who knows, not my spiritual business. But one thing that I can tell you is that if you take a look at your own life for a second and you start asking yourself, well, how can I start showing up with goddess complex? Really allow yourself to entertain that idea and figure out how much can you accomplish in your world the way that you want to. You don't have to make the same decisions that anybody else, chooses to make when they operate in a god or goddess complex. And I know that some people may challenge or question the idea of the negative side of having this type of complex. Well, it says that you'll have a lack of empathy. It says that you won't care about anybody else, or, you'll have a difficult time with accepting criticism. Let's break it down. Let's talk about it. Having a lack of empathy. Number one, and again, this is just my belief system. Every woman that I have, and I can actually say every woman that I have come into contact with in, my years of living, I will tell you that I have not come across a single woman who has struggled with empathy in some regard, in some way, shape, or form. I have come across the masculine, though, who struggle with this. It is of my belief that that is something that women naturally innately have. And when the male passes through the womb of a woman, she essentially gives the masculine specific traits, certain traits, right? I believe that empathy is one of those traits that gets passed down to the man. I don't think that the man naturally has the ability to be empathetic. I think he learns how to be empathetic, and then there are some that do not. I'm not talking about the non-playing characters of the world. I am talking about actual soul body people. So when you are a woman who chooses to operate in goddess complex, please do not carry fear or concern or worry around if you will struggle with empathy. It is already naturally in you. You could probably right now today make a list of all of the things that you could empathize with, and I'm sure this list will be long. And it doesn't matter how much people, oh, I'm stoic, I don't care, I'm this zodiac sign. You start bringing up certain topics, certain people, certain situations, you will see the empathy come up out of those women. So that's one thing too that I want to encourage my women. That's why I say this conversation is specifically for my women. Please do not get caught up in this idea, this conditioning that you having unshakable belief in yourself, you viewing yourself as a goddess, as a creator of your own existence, means that you have to forego empathy. You do not. The next thing that people often have, a bit of a touching go about is the criticism component. I was watching this video and they were talking about, how close God complex is to narcissism, and how one of the sharing traits is that neither of these types of personalities can take criticism. Let's really talk about it though. When you deal with someone's criticism, and criticism being feedback, essentially, right? This is the information that someone is giving to you based off of their perspective of what they see, what they know, what they hear, all of that, right? So when you are thinking about the criticism that someone is giving you about your life, the thing that I really want you to ask yourself as you start curating your own goddess complex is, what type of feedback or criticism are you going to receive, and from whom? As a part of being the creator of your existence, you actually get to create the rules of engagement. You get to decide if you don't want to take criticism from anyone at all, or if you want to only take it from a select few people. And I'll give you an example. One of the things that I do on a regular basis when it comes down to receiving feedback, receiving criticism, when someone is giving me their evaluation, right? They're giving me their judgment on whatever the situation is. I like to go through kind of a mental checklist first, and then that tells me if I want to accept their criticism or not. The very first thing that I always ask myself, which really eliminates a lot of, the critique, is a twofold question. Have they been through what I have went through? And are they looking to achieve the same outcome that I am? That's my personal take. That's my personal belief. It does not have to be yours. But my point for sharing that is to just give you, a start of what you can do to help you build out your own checklist of how you can determine whether or not you want to take someone else's feedback. You don't have to. That's another beautiful thing about the goddess complex. You don't have to take anyone's criticism. Now, criticism is different from advice. It is different from feedback, actually, even though I did use those words interchangeably. It is different from guidance and wisdom. So even when I, was doing the research and everything, and I'm reading up on God complex versus goddess complex, the one thing that really stuck out to me when I kept seeing all this dialogue about they can't take criticism, let's really think about this, ladies, especially in the day and age that we live in. The type of criticism that women will typically receive is destructive. It is something that is not to our benefit. Unfortunately, this comes from the hands or the mouths of both men and women. So when you are concerned as to whether or not you'll be able to take feedback when you start navigating your life from a goddess complex state of being, I want you to have already built out, or I want to encourage you, I don't want to tell you what to do, but I want to encourage you to start building out, who am I taking this information from? Why would I listen to them? What outcome are they looking to achieve by giving me this criticism? This is the type of critical thinking that typical, patriarchal societies, modern societies do not want women, especially, to be thinking. They don't want you thinking like this, because if you start thinking like this, then you will find that most of the stuff we have been fed is bullshit anyway. Having this unshakable belief in yourself, it could honestly put you at the state of $1 million status if that's what you want. Stay at home wife to, a great spouse who is going to be of service to you if that's what you want. A powerhouse CEO if that is what you want. An earthy badass who is out here, living with the plants and with the earth and caring for Mother Nature, if that is what you want. Whatever way you want to show up in your goddess embodiment, you will get so much closer to that experience when you start living your life in a goddess complex state of consciousness. The beautiful thing about goddess embodiment is there is this energetic special treatment that you get when you start to navigate your life every day in this state of being. When you start waking up every morning, being the creator, being the one that gets to determine how life looks for you today, you will start to notice that energy starts shifting and bending and, maneuvering in a way to where exactly what you desire, exactly what you said, it shows up. It happens, or it leaves, because sometimes that's what you need. You need it to leave in order for you to experience the thing that you want. That is a form of special treatment. That is the energy responding to you because it understands, okay, she knows how to maneuver. She knows what she's doing. She understands her power. She understands that she's the creator. She is the magician. She's the one that holds the power and the key to make energy work the way that it should work. Those who don't feel like they receive special treatment. So I'll give an example of this. I remember I was at a lounge and there were two women that were sitting like very close to me. And the music, it was supposed to be live music that night. The music hadn't started, so it was quite quiet in this lounge. But these two women were sitting next to me and they were both drop dead gorgeous, absolutely beautiful. But one of them, though, you could tell that she had a bit of an inferiority complex to her. Like she really did not see how beautiful she was. And the other woman, you could see she was like the total opposite. You know what I mean? She was talking next to me about how she was going to get them drinks. And, she's like, I know there's a guy that's going to come up and get us drinks tonight. And the other girl was basically telling her, young lady, was telling her that she was doing too much. She just kept saying, oh my gosh, you're always doing too much. Every time we go out, you do too much. You don't have to try to get free drinks every time we go out. That is a prime example, ladies, of one woman who is engaging and embodying goddess complex, and the other who is living as if she does not have the same ability. And mind you, again, these are two very beautiful women. So both of them could have very well been, had free drinks all night. Like it really could have been that. But because the other young lady was so conditioned, and it was obvious that she was conditioned into believing that expecting the masculine, who is naturally here to serve, who is naturally here to be of service to the feminine in multiple ways, not just financially. But because she didn't know that, she felt like it would be doing too much. When the other young lady was very clear, very aware that she was instructing and putting out energetically the request that needed to be fulfilled, and she knew it was going to get fulfilled. She said, let me create the opportunity. The way I create the opportunity is I sit here. I sit in my femininity. I sit in my beauty. I sit in my aura. I sit knowing that I'm a magnet to the bright divine masculine that's going to show up and recognize I don't have a drink in front of me. And he's going to take care of that. That's what she did. So she said, I'm going to create the opportunity and then the result will show up. So that is an example of goddess complex, not the BS that we see on Google. All right. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that this sparks something in you, that it encourages you to start exploring and looking into your own goddess complex, because that shows up differently for all of us as women. And I have something very special actually coming up where we're going to do a bit of a deep dive to help you get clear around your own inner goddess complex. But the first thing I really wanted to do was I wanted to help you debunk the myth that there was something wrong with a goddess who is naturally, organically, spiritually a goddess operating in goddess complex. This is not going to resonate with every woman, and that's because unfortunately not every woman is a goddess. Not every woman is going to be able to resonate with that. There are some non-playing characters to show us the other side, to show us the other perspectives that we need to see. All right. So if it did resonate with you, be on the lookout, because I do have something quite special for you that's going to help you really get comfortable with this identity that you can shift into. And that is going to help you become a better conjure woman at the end of the day. So until then, until next time, be well.